Hi friends, I'm Chelsea Grayson coming to you once again from the Office of the CEO. This is my show where I can help you be more successful in your current career, and I can also help you successfully transition to a new career. Today I wanted to give you a couple of my favorite tips on how to improve your public speaking skills. Now, when I say public speaking, I'm actually including everything in the range of you're in front of a huge audience of 5,000 in a big conference hall. Everybody's paid $200 a head to come and watch you speak on a particular topic. But I'm also talking about all the way down to a much smaller level. You're in a conference room at your place of work. You've got two colleagues there. Even if they're on your level and they're not superiors to you, that, in my opinion, is also public speaking and where you need to continue to hone your craft. Whether we're talking micro, whether we're talking huge audience, the key to public speaking and the key to doing it well is just remembering that it's a performance, it's theater, and you need to approach it as such. You need to rehearse, you need to be confident, you need to go out there with energy and enthusiasm. And fundamentally, throughout my remarks today, just remember that the most important thing is making sure that the audience, whether it's an audience of 2 or whether it's an audience of 5,000, is confident in you. They're not concerned when you walk out onto the stage, when you walk into the room, when you sit down to make your case about something, that you're nervous. They're not concerned that you're going to stumble. They're not concerned that you're going to forget your place or that there's something that you don't know or that there's a question that you're not going to be able to answer. You need to make sure, again, even if it's just performance art, that they know that you are perfectly comfortable up on that stage, that you know what you're talking about, and that nobody is going to trip you up. And that is the absolute most important fundamental concept to remember, regardless the size of the crowd that you're speaking in front of. So let's get started really quickly. So again, I think that the most important thing is that you lean into the anxiety. Everyone gets nervous. It doesn't matter how many times you go up on stage. It doesn't matter how many times you walk into a boardroom. It doesn't matter how many times you walk into a conference room to present a couple of slides on a particular initiative that you're presenting to your management team. Everyone gets nervous. You could be 85 years old and have been doing this forever. You're the CEO of a huge publicly traded company. You're getting on for your shareholder call, your quarterly shareholder call. You're going to get nervous, even if you've got a script in front of you. So just remember, everyone gets nervous. The key is not letting people know that you are nervous. Go out there, huge smile, or put your game face on, whatever it is. Puff your chest out, have great posture. We're going to get into that in a little bit. And make sure that nobody sees you sweat. I know that sounds corny. I know that that's probably something you've heard for a long time, but it's absolutely the best piece of advice I can give you. Act with confidence. Lean into the anxiety, use that anxious energy to just be energy to propel you through a really successful presentation. And others will see you doing that. They'll be very happy that you're up there and they aren't, because everyone experiences anxiety, like I said, and a lot of people have sort of secondary anxiety when they see others presenting. They start putting themselves in those shoes and wondering how they would feel up there. Make them happy it's you and not them. Then they can sit back and they can enjoy the ride and let you drive. And after all, that's what you want, right? You've put yourself in that spotlight. Enjoy the spotlight. Get your stardom, right? Become a celebrity in that moment. Really lean into it, and it will actually take you along the way to the next steps of your career. Okay, next tip, and I can't emphasize this one enough. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Again, like I said, every time you go speak, whether it's in front of 2 people, in a small meeting, whether you're talking about a small lecture hall, a huge conference where you've been asked to be the keynote, whether it's a shareholder meeting, whether it's you're giving a toast as the bridesmaid at your friend's wedding. The key, that is theater. And so the key is to rehearse ahead of time. Now, you're probably not going to be going up there taking notes. At most, you'll have slides, again, if you're making a presentation. But so rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. So you don't have to worry about the fact that you've got no notes and that you've only got some slides maybe to look at, or maybe nothing at all. Maybe you'll have a couple of bullets written down, but you really don't want to be looking down at your notes. So just make sure and rehearse at least a couple of times. Now, the more public speaking engagements and the more meetings you lead and the more presentations you do, the less you'll have to rehearse, because a lot of this stuff can become like rote. But at the beginning, just rehearse in your hotel room if you've been flown in to speak at a conference, rehearse in your living room, rehearse in front of your partner, rehearse in front of your kids, rehearse in front of a camera just like this, and then play it back. Just make sure that this thing becomes just muscle memory for you, so that if you happen to lose your place when you're actually doing your presentation, you'll just pick it right up, because your mouth will keep moving even if your brain is lagging a little bit behind. That's what actors do. So just make sure and rehearse. All right, so lower your voice. Now, if you ever met me in person, you would notice that I talk a little bit like this, actually. I talk faster, my voice is a little bit higher, but when I am presenting to you on this show, for example, or when I am doing some public speaking, I lower my voice a couple of octaves. I speak much slower and much more deliberately. In that way, I'm not going to trip over my words, generally speaking. We're all human, we're not cyborgs, so we do trip every once in a while. But I'm very deliberate about what I'm saying. People are hanging on every word, and it tends to be that people believe you more when you speak slowly. Not too slowly, obviously. They don't want to get impatient waiting for you to make the point. But if you lower your voice, that makes you appear more confident. That will put people at ease and make them more comfortable, which, as I've been saying all along, is really the theme of the day here. And you'll be able to think ahead of your words, so you won't get ahead of yourself. So you can actually add some ad-libs in. You know, you just won't stumble as much as you will if you're trying to get everything out quicker. You'll seem like you're trying to rush through it, like you're uncomfortable up there. You won't seem like you're commanding the room. So just lower your voice, speak more slowly, get used to doing this. By the way, this is actually very significant for the women out there, because we do tend to have higher voices and speak a lot quicker because we think that we're getting a lot of points across. Better to get less points across and speak more slowly to appear more confident. This is still a man's world, and that's how you're going to be able to fit in and make them feel comfortable that you're there. All right, no ums. Practice, taking the ums and the uhs out of your speech. This is just a tick. We are not born speaking like this. We're not born with the likes and the ums and my absolute least favorite thing in the world, the right. So, you know, I'm not even sure how people pepper in the right, but they do, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Take out the word right. You don't have to confirm after every sentence with a right with a question mark or right with an exclamation point that people agree with you. Take it out. That's just a placeholder for the word or You don't want those in there either. The more you practice removing those from your speech pattern, the more you're going to see that even in common dialogue, you're not going to use those words anymore. You will come off as more intelligent and more academic. Take the word like out of your speech pattern as well. Start practicing this in day-to-day conversation. It's really difficult to do this, but the tip I gave you earlier about speaking more slowly, that will actually help you, because before every word, you're going to choose very carefully what your words are. So you won't have to insert the word like, or right. And you'll feel very comfortable with the gaps and the silences between words and sentences. And you'll feel very comfortable that your audience is going along with you, and you don't have to get them to agree with you every couple of seconds by saying right. Enough said. I said a little bit about posture earlier. Sit up, stand up, whatever it is. If you've been given a microphone and you're walking around a large stage, command that stage, take up the entire space. Make sure you're wearing comfortable shoes and shoes that don't slide. Hold the microphone properly if that's what you're doing, but make sure that you walk around or sit with confidence. Mind your posture. Get some core control, work on that core. It takes physical strength to do a proper public presentation. So work on that. All right, so my next tip, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, best case scenario, you don't do what I'm doing here, but I'm giving myself a little flexibility because this is my side gig, not my main gig. Don't use notes, people. If you can, memorize everything you're going to say, or if you're going to take notes, just do it something like this, where it's one word per page so that you're not reading off of the page. You see, I've got one word right here, two words, no notes. So you don't want to be reading off of something. You don't want a teleprompter where you're just reading a script. This actually isn't theater, even though I've been saying it the whole time. There's no script here. This is more reality TV, and nobody, if people were here to watch you read off of a script or watch you read verbatim for notes, they could just buy your book and go home and read it themselves. But that's not what they're here for. They're here to understand what's in the margins. They're here to hear you articulate your thoughts on this presentation. And so try to go off note as much as possible. If you need to bring notes up to the lectern, or if you need to have notes by your side just as a Dumbo's feather to make you feel more comfortable, great. Best case scenario, you absolutely never look at those notes. Now, it does help some people to have a PowerPoint or some sort of a slide presentation that they can refer to, but I think we all know the rules by now in PowerPoints. You shouldn't have too many words per slide. So you're certainly not going to have anything there that you can read out loud verbatim either. Just a couple of bullet points that'll hopefully clue you in if, God forbid, you lose your place. All right, next tip. Over the years, as you develop your public speaking style and skills, you'll develop some intros and some lead-ins. Some anecdotes that you generally always tell depending on what the topic is, some ways that you introduce certain ideas and concepts, certain phrases that you use to describe situations or certain initiatives. These themes are going to come up over and over and over again. And the more of these that you build into your repertoire that are uniquely yours, then even if you stumble, you can always go back to one of your anecdotes. You can always go back to one of the ways that you commonly have phrased things, or forget about stumbling. You'll be able to have seamless introduction of certain concepts by just having the way that you always introduce those concepts on deck. So even if you're talking about something brand new, it's generally a new topic, it's a new initiative that you're introducing in a meeting, for example, there will be some common themes that you've always talked about historically. And if you borrow the ways that you've described those concepts or initiatives historically, you'll feel more comfortable. You'll feel like, I've been here before. You can shake off the jitters. I've talked about this before and it was successful. Here's how I did it. I'm going to go back to using that 10-word phrase. So develop some intros and lead-ins and typical ways that you introduce or discuss certain concepts and initiatives, and it'll make you feel like you've done this before and you're not charting new territory. Questions. All right, so sometimes it helps people as a throat clearing mechanism, whether at the beginning of their presentation or at some rough part in the middle of their presentation that they're particularly anxious about, to start using rhetoric. So asking yourself a question as a presenter and then answering it. So teeing up the question for yourself and then answering it sometimes is a way to help people, rather than looking into the void of the audience and just sort of jabbering at them, feel like they're interacting with the audience. And that's why, for example, when you get to the end of your presentation, and let's say you've allotted 15 minutes for Q&A, a lot of times that's when you're the most comfortable, because even though you're getting hit with Q&A and you have no idea what it is they're going to hit you with, and you don't even know if you have the answer to all of the questions, you're interacting with people. You're not just talking to a sea of faces or into the void. So interacting with yourself up on stage is a way of simulating that and making yourself feel a little bit more comfortable if you start to feel like you're just lecturing. Okay, my final tips are less about how to speak more successfully, but just how to gain speaking experience. Speak to speak. That's my favorite tip of all. No matter what room you're in, no matter what conversation you're in, if you're a particularly shy person, if you're an introvert and you wouldn't tend to speak because you're not being asked to speak, you're not being asked a question, you haven't been asked to present on something, raise your hand anyways and speak to speak. You've got nothing to lose. You haven't been asked to perform or speak there. They aren't expecting it. So anything you say is just going to be additive to the conversation or to the presentation. Obviously, you don't want to say something that you haven't thought out, but don't think about it too much. Raise your hand, answer a question. Raise your hand, ask a question. Again, a lot of times that's very throat clearing for people. but just get used to speaking just for the purpose of speaking sake in every room you're in. Force yourself to do it and start to notice how many rooms you walk into where you don't speak, where others are speaking. They're the ones in power and they're the ones that'll be remembered. You want to be in that group. Join some trade organizations. A lot of times they will have small, now they'll have virtual events. Sometimes they'll have small local events where they'll have a lunch and they'll have just sort of a panel or a keynote speaker for 10, 15 minutes, getting up and talking about a particular topic or having a dialogue. Volunteer to speak there. You're not getting paid, so there's not a lot of pressure. You don't have to worry about giving someone their bang for their buck. There's usually 15, 20, 30 people at most, not a huge audience. Start to speak there because it's a trade organization for an industry that assumedly you're experienced in and that you've got some knowledge about. You're not talking about a completely foreign subject. You're talking about something that you know very well because it's a trade that you're engaged in. And finally, when you really get good at this and you really feel like you've made a name for yourself and you're comfortable and you want to start making money, join a speakers bureau. There's a few of them out there. Just look up Speakers Bureau on Google and you'll find them all. Washington Speakers Bureau is one example. These are organizations where if they accept you, then they'll put your profile up on their website and they'll start to market you and broker deals for you to speak for organizations and for conferences and for events where you'll get paid, and you can set what your speaker's fee is, whether it's $5,000 an hour, including a 15-minute Q&A or whatever it is, and they'll just start to broker that. They'll take a percentage out, and you'll actually start to make money going out there and being on the speaker circuit, and can be a nice little side gig. All right, so those are some of my favorite tips in terms of how to improve your public speaking skills and how to gain more experience with public speaking. Hope you've enjoyed this. Love for you to drop me a comment. Please, as always, subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the notification button so you don't miss future episodes, and I'll see you next time from the Office of the CEO.